Morning, folks. Welcome back to the Philosophy for Philistines channel with your host, Bill Reimer. I'd like to speak a little bit about the misinformation that appears to be out there regarding the Ukraine and what might lie behind it. How exciting isn't an easily predictable global conflict on the scale of Ragnarok, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, led by a beast numbering 666, featuring an energy crisis caused by green lunacy grand? Why we choose to do business with totalitarian regimes instead of mining and refining our own energy resources ethically is a stunning rejection of reason. It is also a crime against humanity if we happen to be looking for another such crime at present. Are we witnessing the old struggle between the two competing versions of socialism reemerge? Are the two main versions of social collectivism with its rejection of individual liberty actually what lies behind the Ukrainian conflict? I recall visiting Vemork Museum in Telemark Norway so as to better understand the resistance fighters who prevented heavy water from being shipped to Germany. In the center of that museum, above the village of Rjukan, is a shrine to the Bolshevik Revolution. Two versions of social collectivism were on full display. Nazism and its version of social collectivism, which identifies with the victimizer, and Marxism with its version of social collectivism, which identifies with the victim. Both murder the very idea of the sovereign and autonomous individual. Both involve total state control over the economy, education, healthcare, and are replete with social engineering policies led by the state. Both have resulted in tyranny and industrial murder on a massive scale. Neither fought to free people from the overreach of the collective. It appalled me as I began to realize that the concept of individual agency was non-existent among the freedom fighters. I'm not all certain that much has changed today in that village in Norway. You will have noted that over the past 2 years, as Parliament was suspended, as the government passed laws and enacted legislation that contradicted the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is the supreme law of the land, and engaged in policies that no government has the right to enact. First of all, without proper parliamentary discussion and oversight. And second of all, only under a situation where the nation itself was at threat, which is a situation, of course, that COVID did not pose the country. The government deliberately engaged in fear-mongering. And you notice that ultimately it resulted in our own government here in Canada acting in an illiberal, authoritarian, virtually totalitarian manner, confiscating people's bank accounts, mischaracterizing them, telling them that they held unacceptable views. We are seeing the struggle between these two ideologies reemerge, and also we're seeing a fusion between the two, where in postmodern and cultural Marxist government, there is a perverse combination of both fascism and socialism. The state tells us what people are holding unacceptable views. I believe that this type of thinking is what lies behind the Ukrainian conflict, that actually we're seeing radical socialists and fascists slugging it out, where innocent children are being murdered in kindergartens. But moreover, I'm seeing it here. The more you want the state to do for you, the more you will surrender autonomy over your private life. The more we allow the state to enact laws that contradict the supreme law of the land, the less liberty and freedom we will have. So I want to suggest that the struggle has always been the same. Whether people actually want to be free and exercise personal agency, or whether they want their government to do everything for them and dictate to them how they shall live. Throughout the 20th century, every time a state engaged in those policies, it resulted in murder on an industrial scale and unholy tyranny. I keep asserting, and I'll say it again, I am the most avid counter-revolutionary you will ever possibly meet. I am a classical liberal in the English sense. I believe in absolute free markets. I do not believe in lobbying by government. The only people that have the right to lobby their politicians are their constituents, not businesses that are buying their way into government, creating a neo-fascist system. And I will not have the state telling us what we can think and what we can say and how we shall say it. These speech laws and these restrictions on freedom of discourse, I tell you what, when we can no longer speak, there's only one thing that remains when human beings can no longer communicate and dare to challenge one another. That is that we will go to war. The result will be the Ukraine coming here. We are in a desperate situation, but because I believe in individual autonomy, it requires that each one of us awaken to this threat. That's why Christianity is so important in Western thinking. It calls the individual accountable before God. No one can repent on your behalf. There is no such thing as collective virtue. Each one of us must acknowledge their own flaws, and mine are many, which is why you will never hear me virtue signal. You're not going to hear me climb up on my moral high horse, and many of you who know me know that that would be most inappropriate. But what I will not have is other people telling me how I should live or having me tell them how they should live. People should live by the rule of law, which is being undermined by our socially collective neo-Marxist, fascist morons in high places. And you know, it just doesn't involve our political class. It's gone all throughout our academy. It's even in public schools where children are being taught provably a neo-Marxist ideology of critical race theory, which is a part of the larger critical theory of the Frankfurt School. We must wake up and stop this onslaught. Our political parties have been utterly corrupted, and they're bought and paid for by global interests. And we need to look long and hard at developing our own energy sector ethically by both mining and refining our own energy. And even if you hope in green technology, there's not a single piece of green technology that doesn't rely on the oil and gas industry to produce it. Plastics are made from hydrocarbons. I think many of you must have flunked grade 12 chemistry. To believe in the green lie is one of the absolute stupidest things that any educated person could lay claim to. We need to mine hydrocarbons and refine them. Okay, well, I don't think we're hearing the full story on what's going on in the Ukraine. Certainly the Russians aren't innocent. I've never assumed that a KGB, they're just like the mob, the KGB. The only way that you leave it is horizontally in a pine box. And if there's actual Nazis involved in this conflict between these two main versions of social collectivism, it indicates to me that that entire part of the world is incapable of conceiving of the sovereign, accountable individual. Carl Jung said it. If you want to be a whole individual, you better individuate. There's some things to think and pray about. Have a great day.